you may not think $5,000 for a gift basket is a lot of money for an actor, but you're also spending this much a night on a hotel room. And in reality, they're going to spend 12 hours a day on a set.
Toward the end of your book, What You Don't Learn in Film School, Shane, you have this story. It's a fascinating story where you said you saved a Hollywood studio, what, 50 million?
It was about, yeah, and it was for a very large trilogy that they were producing at the time. And what had happened is they had committed to making 3 blockbuster movies, tentpoles, over the course of, I think, 5 or 6 years. And they had tremendous success with the first one. It was everything that they make these kind of movies for and more. And the second one had come out and not done very well. And I got a phone call one day from somebody that I had worked with when I was doing studio work. And I guess he had talked to one of the heads of production at this other studio and said, you need to kind of flip the script on your mindset. You really need to get an indie rat to look at your budget, your schedule, and your script. And let somebody go in with the mindset that understands production at this level, but thinks, how do you make something for $1 really for a dime? And I got a phone call out of the blue one day, and it was the head of production for a studio, and they had me come in. They wouldn't talk much about it on the phone. It was very hush-hush and covert. Everything was in code. And I walked into the boardroom, and there was all these people sitting around a horseshoe table with, their Fiji bottles of water and their highlighter pens or Sharpies and their pads of paper, and they had a seat for me. And I couldn't figure out why I was there. And, one of the head people came in. He was wearing a suit. I remember that. And told me the situation and what they were dealing with and how they had made really big commitments going into the third that the second film's lack of success did not justify. But they were contractually obligated to certain escalations in people's pay. They were shooting in different countries all over the world. So they asked if I would take a look at they wanted me to look at the first 2 films. Then they wanted me to break down the third one, just from my perspective. And it was heavy CGI. It was a big tentpole studio movie. It's not what I do. But they had me go through everything, and we spent a few days. I had to do everything there. I wasn't allowed to leave with any materials. My cell phone had to be far. There was a person in the room with me at all times, and just broke it down. And it just common sense. And then, I'd see a way to save, a lot of money. And they would tell me, no, you can't do that because we have this contract in place, or there are these agreements with unions, or, we have to pay these actors these scales. But it was interesting looking at a budget for a film that was, over $200 million. I mean, when you're making films that are comfortably, in that $1 million range, and you find a place for every dime and you make sure it stretches, and you start looking at where money is going at dollars at that level, it's mind-blowing. The money that's spent, wasted, that'll never see the screen. Perk packages, daily per diems and bonuses and private jets back and forth, hotels that cost a fortune that these actors will be in to just sleep a couple hours, a few hours a night. It's mind-blowing. And so I felt very fortunate to be a part of that process. It reminded me of the difference between being an independent filmmaker and really being embedded with the studio system. And this was at a time when the studios were just spending so much money. And I don't think there was a real checks and balances on where these dollars were going. It was just about give the actors what they need, give the filmmakers what they need. Above the line producers, I think there were 17 of them. 18 of them. That's not including the talent, cinematographers and high-end crew. I mean, there were some really big crew people on this too. I mean, this was a big film. And I think, looking back, that I don't think anything's changed with them. It's no surprise that a studio will gladly spend $200 million to make $20 million. I mean, that's obviously not the goal, but that's kind of the business model for a lot of the studios. A lot of people say, well, 80% of studio films fail. That's true, but what we deem a failure, just because we look at the domestic box office, doesn't mean globally it was a failure. There's a lot of ways that they can still make money on ancillaries and different outlets for their project, or plushies and toys and all the stuff that come with it. But it was an interesting experience, and it really made me appreciate what we do as independent filmmakers, and why I think it was an experience like that because I just come off of making Gridiron Gang shortly before, and was lining up to do some more studio and network projects. And I remember walking away from that and just saying, sure, who wouldn't want a paycheck like some of these people were getting? Of course, who wouldn't? But when it comes down to getting movies made and loving what you do and who you do it with, and passion for, maybe it's your art, passion for working with the people that you care about, or just wanting to kick a movie out every year or two, it really kind of helped push me into the direction of just saying, you know what, that isn't what I want to pursue. I want to be able to find people that want to go get their hands dirty, stretch a buck, shoot where we're not supposed to shoot with cameras that aren't the newest or the coolest, and go make fun movies that, people may or may not like. It was kind of a life-changing experience for me. I'm glad we saved the studio a lot of money. I mean, I couldn't remember if it was 38 or 52. I haven't read that part of the book in a while. But we saved them a lot of money. I mean, in just common sense money.
Where was most of the money being spent that you ended up cutting?
Most of the money was, believe it or not, studios spend an outrageous amount of money in post-production on films like that. And they have contracts, they have ways that they're going to put money into something from one account into another. And, that happens when, they'll have 3 edit bays working on one film. That's a walk and talk drama. They can have an apprentice editor setting things up for the assistant editor setting up things for the other editor. And the amount of money they're charging for these kit fees and these bungalow rentals, and there are union jobs, so those pay scales are what they are unless you're getting an Academy Award winner or a real hot editor. But what I notice is just I know a lot of editors. I mean, editing's my background. CGI, I've got a lot of people in my life that do that. And when you start budgeting things and you start getting teams of 30, 40, 50 people to do something that you say, you can cut this down. You don't have to go this route. You could go to a different country. You don't have a contract with this country to do post. You can talk to these guys here. They would love your business and probably cut this. Most of these things were done in post and CGI and just kind of reworking perks. I mean, it was even, studios have their private jets. They perk out, and have deals with hotels all over the world, but there's only so many jets to go around. So it even got to the point where we were literally making deals with other private charter services and other people that we knew in the private airline business that were able to help save a lot of money. Because, a flight from LA to New York, people don't realize a private plane flight could cost over 20 grand. It's not a cheap flight. So imagine flying people from LA to other parts of the world and trying to just connect dots with transportation coordinators that weren't going to bruise any egos, but just kind of inform some of the executives on where they could go. And that's what we did. Now, how much money they ended up using on that savings, or how much, whatever the dollar amount was that we saved, I don't know what they ended up spending. I just know on paper, following all their guidelines and rules and their, what they asked, us to adhere to in putting together a new budget, it was pretty substantial. For all I know, they spent more than that, than the original budget. They probably did, but everything checked out. It was doable.
And during this meeting, were there certain topics that made them uncomfortable when you said, let's cut this and we'll do this and we'll move this over here? And you could see, that's probably not going to work for them.
There's a lot of looking around. What I found in a system like that is there's a pecking order, there is a hierarchy, and as there is in most business. And a lot of people, when you'd suggest something, you wouldn't get one person saying yes or no. You get a lot of people looking to 1 or 2 different people and then looking to another person, and then it just ends up going to the head of the table anyway. So it's rare people are going to go out on a limb and say, that's what we need to do. It kind of, the idea is always played pinball, or would come back after 3 or 4 discussions to a no, or a, hey, that's good, can we try this over there? And they were very forward thinking. Once they started seeing, it wasn't like I reinvented the wheel for them, it was just getting them to just kind of throttle back a little bit on the hemorrhaging of money on everything, giving everybody everything. Okay, you have made these commitments to these actors. I get that, but they don't need to know what you're spending on these things. These gift perks, these, hotel rooms, or these other perks that go on that these actors are given at films at that level. There's different ways to still give them what you're contractually obligated to give them and save. And we were getting to the point where we were literally saving $200-300 on every gift basket. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we were literally getting down to. We were doing everything we could to save them money.
Gift basket, so that is a typical thing on certain sets?
Oh, sure. Sure, the studios treat their actors really well, and I think even independent filmmakers, should. If they don't, when you get an actor that shows up on your film that's, a special get, I think welcoming them with something, even if it's a fruit basket or a bottle of nail polish or something, is good. But studios, they have some really, and there's a lot of sponsorship that comes with that too. It's kind of like the Oscars. But there is costs. There are, all sorts of things that go into these things that cost money. Everything costs money. And, when you start going in with the mindset of, okay, instead of just saying you're going to spend $5,000 on every gift basket and it's going to end up costing you $2,500 to $3,500 after you get the free, how do you make them feel equally special for $500 or $600? And it's doable. It's just about taking the time to break it down and not just throwing the money at the problem.
Sure. And then you said the hotel room where they may just stay over.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, there wasn't a lot we could do with hotel rooms because of contracts. Various studios and production entities, especially when studios are going into other parts of the world, there are a lot of setups already. So you're not going to go in and ruffle too many feathers with that. But it's just the cost, and it's reminding them that you may not think $5,000 for a gift basket is a lot of money for an actor, but you're also spending this much a night on a hotel room. And in reality, they're going to spend 12 hours a day on a set. Then they're going to be doing this press junket, maybe this. And at the end of the day, this is, with the exception of their days off, this is where they're going to hang their head at night. And how can some of these things be worked out? And I think most of those things were kind of finagled more for not the top tier level of actor, but it was about finding other similar accommodations that were substantially lower. I mean, it's not rocket surgery. I mean, I've got a nephew who's getting married at Pebble Beach coming up, and they threw us all the available hotels. And I mean, I think the rooms start at $1,200, $1,400 a night. And there's two things I don't pay for myself: is a nice fancy hotel room and a first class airfare. I'm just sitting on a plane going from A to B. I'll do a coach. I have no problem with that. I made 3 phone calls, and I'm basically 5 minutes from the wedding, spending $209 a night for the wedding. That's just the mentality that I have. I just think there's money that is better served somewhere else, and so that's the mentality I kind of took with them and everything. And they were receptive to a lot of the ideas. Again, did they end up doing it? I know I wasn't leaving until I was able to show them a savings, so they at least accepted what I presented at the end of the day, but I couldn't tell you what they ended up spending. You never know. But I know that they were concerned going in and needed some cuts. So I don't think they just brought me in to have me warm a seat for 3 days.
Well, I don't want to blow my street cred here, but what is an indie rat?
I'm an indie rat. It's people that just, they don't wait for the machine. They figure out a way. I always, I talk about in the book is, give me an actor, a camera, and a place to do it, and let's go make a movie. It's not waiting for a machine to decide, when all the stars align. When we did Gridiron Gang, we made that deal, I believe, in 1993. It was the most sought after property in Hollywood. Everybody had bid on it but Paramount. And, hundreds of producers, directors, and actors all wanted to be a part of it. And then it gets to the studio, and it took 2 years to finally go into turnaround. It never got made. And, fast forward to 2006, and I know not every film goes through that, but it's not uncommon. And I had spent some time at a network after doing Gridiron. I was brought on to develop in-house projects for a major network with a writing partner of mine at the time. And we spent, I think, 13 months there talking about a lot of great projects that never got made. And these were passion projects that the network wanted to do. These weren't our ideas. We were brought in to do the passion projects that the high-ups wanted to see get made. And the meetings and the development discussions, and I'll never forget it, the VP of the network brought me into his office one day after our 100th, development meeting on one show. And it was Friday, and he said, "You like scotch?" I said, "I like scotch." And he poured us a scotch. We put our feet up on his coffee table and shot the breeze for a few minutes. And he said, "You're a filmmaker, man. You don't belong here." He said, "I can see your frustration." He said, "You'll always have an open door with me, but I think you need to just go out and make movies." He goes, "This isn't how you work." I said, "Yeah, I just don't understand it." I said, "We've been here 13 months. We've gone from this project for 4 months to, oh, that's not cool anymore. Let's jump on this one. Oh, that's not going to fit in today's climate." And then we go to something else. And I said, "Here we're on round 3 in 13 months, and we haven't done anything." I said, "My idea is write something that you're excited about, get some friends together and go shoot it." And that's what I do. That's what I believe in. And I think at that point, I had just gotten to, in my life, was where it was about just doing what we wanted to do. And it doesn't agree with everybody, and not everybody likes what I do. And that's not why I don't do it for people to like it. I do it because I need to do it to feel alive. It's, what I need to do. And it's been a lot of fun. And I wouldn't trade those days in doing the studio film or, working with the networks the way I did it. It taught me so much to be able to do what I do today, because I can see it from both sides. I can see it from a creative person who doesn't have a lot of budget to work with, but I also know the end game, and when this thing is done, where it has to go, how it has to be exploited around the world, and making sure we check the boxes that, all 54 territories and 172 countries that are out there that buy, there's something in it for everybody.
How can the quote-unquote indie rats and the quote-unquote suits harmoniously work together? Because each needs each other.
Each needs each other. That is a great question. I wish I had all the answers, and I'd like to think I play well with others. Some of the greatest relationships I've had in this town have been with the suits. And we all have to remember is this is a business at the end of the day. But it's like, let's take something like the car business, which we've talked about before. You have the people that actually design the cars that, have jobs designing and engineering. Then you have the people that actually have to be the executives behind the decision to greenlight a car being made. And then you have the car dealerships that are going to acquire the cars, and then you have the salesmen who have to sell them, and then you got the mechanics who have to work on them. Everybody needs each other. It's kind of like on a film set, we have a rule where I don't care if you're the star of the show, if you're a PA, you're all equal to this machine running in harmony. And we all need to show respect for one another. And I think there's always been a little bit of a clash between the suits and the filmmaker. But I think if people can get on the same page, and I think if the executives would trust the artist that they're giving their money to or distributing, I think if you fall in love with an idea, you fall in love with a script or a filmmaker's vision from a previous film, you need to decide, I either trust this person to run with it or I don't. And I think when you get too many cooks in the kitchen, I think it stifles the creativity. I know I've been involved with some pretty big projects where the suits and the artists couldn't ever get along. It got very, very intense. It got explosive at times, even on sets, where a studio exec will show up not happy with a director for a style they're shooting in, or unhappy because a DP is moving the camera too much, and the tempers that flare on set in front of everybody. I mean, we are in an industry of children, whether we like it or not. And I just don't think it needs to be that way. And I think communication's key. It's not just, okay, we believe in you, you're getting paid, go shoot this movie. And then we look at dailies and we tell you what we like and don't like. And when you start doing that to an artist, it really, the hair on the back of their neck goes up. I've seen it time and time again. And I just think there's probably some basic fundamentals. I find a lot of suits spend a lot of time psychoanalyzing things. They take a lot of classes in body language, how to read somebody's temperament across the desk or across the room. And I don't think they've been taught, or maybe there isn't a class, maybe we need to make this the next book, is basically how to understand the inner workings of an artist and what those buttons are in their life that can make them, because once that trust has been broken, or once that communication has been derailed, I don't think it's something that can come back.
Do they do the steeple? With the hands?
I mean, a lot of this, a lot of talking like this.
Thinking,
am I doing that right now?
No, I'm just thinking of like, any good movie with an executive or something, you'll have the steeple and they'll be thinking.
Watch Phil Joanno's film Entropy. I think it's a brilliant film. Phil's a friend. He directed Gridiron Gang. Phil, it's no secret, Phil punched out a studio executive in front of 300 people on a set of Heaven's Prisoner. And I think it was Heaven's Prisoner he did. It was the Alec Baldwin film. And you watch what builds to that point, and a lot of people don't believe that actually happened. I can assure you it did. And it happens more often than you realize. It may not go to blows as much anymore. I think people are ready for that now, or they hide behind texts and emails is really what people are able to do. I think also a lot of the face-to-face has been taken out of our business. Everything's text messaging and emails. And, I think a lot of people do that out of trying to get it done quick, fear. I think fear is a big component of that, is people don't like confrontation. And I think, if executives would just understand that when you trust an artist's vision and you greenlight him or her to fulfill that promise, that you really need to just trust. Sidney Lumet in his book said something brilliant about hiring actors. And he said, when you're a director and you make a decision on an actor, good or bad, you have to live with that decision. And you have to do everything you can to see that journey as smooth a sailing as possible. I can't remember the words he used, but there were times in his career where he said that he really thought he had the right actor for a role and realized on day one in rehearsal that this was the biggest mistake of his life. And you would never know it as an audience member. You would never know it as maybe the actor who he hired, but it's about understanding the being that you're working with. And artists are fragile. We're very sensitive to everything. We take everything personally. If somebody doesn't like a cut or somebody doesn't like the theme of something or the style, it's a personal attack. It's never separated. And it takes a strong artist to be able to do that. And I think it takes a stronger executive to be able to really find a way to communicate with people on how to get the adjustments a studio or network might need to get what they need. And I've rarely seen it done in a productive way. That's just me.
Sure, and I agree with what you're saying about being sensitive, but I think also, too, some of the quote-unquote suits, and I wish I could find a better word for them, but they're also sensitive in that they don't like being told no, and they don't like people usurping their authority or challenging them, especially if they believe in this pecking order. And there's a lot of fear. I think there's fear from both,
Hollywood
fear
is
and
a
love.
scared
Okay,
town.
so fear from both sides, and so just thinking about what are ways that we could prevent a blow up if one is mirrored in a pecking order mindset and, well, I can't believe you would tell me what to do. Don't you know who I am? And then there's this artist, don't you know what I've done? And I can't believe you would doubt me. And then the clash that happens.
Yeah,
and
it's ego driven. At the end of the day, I mean, it's fear driven and it's ego driven because in our business, it's literally your career could be made or broken in one project. You're either the next Damien Chazelle, or you make a mistake and you don't have a hit, you're done. I mean, look what happened to George Cosmatos. He came off of, God rest him, he was a great filmmaker. I mean, look at what Tombstone. He did Tombstone, and he was, the next greatest thing. And I worked with him on Shadow Conspiracy with Charlie Sheen, which was, I think, the last film he ever did. And I can assure you that's not what he wanted to go 6 feet under with his name on. And I don't think he would have worked much after that film. No disrespect, but not saying I could do anything better. I'm just saying when you look at how fast you can turn around, some great filmmakers and actors in this industry that have hits that people they're just bowled over with, and they do a couple more films and what happens to them, and it's unfair. One of my favorite filmmakers of all time is Mike Vegas. I mean, I admire him because here's a guy who writes, directs, produces, edits, composes, caters, probably cleans the latrine. I mean, that guy is a filmmaker's filmmaker. And obviously when he had Leaving Las Vegas with, Nicolas Cage and Elizabeth Shue and all the Oscar accolades that came with it, how do you deny somebody like that? This guy's going to do it again. Solomon King went through the same thing. He had a string of hits and then had some that weren't as successful. And, I guess it's like that in sports. It's like that in a lot of businesses. I mean, I don't know. It seems like people can, in the suit side, it seems like people can run companies into the ground over and over again and still end up running other companies. But we see that a lot. But I think the artists and the executives, need to find a way to spend more time understanding one another and not just thinking they understand one another. You know, we forget that, you know, I always go back to the record industry and you know, when music was, you know, a business back in the earlier days of A&R representatives working for labels and seeking bands and clubs that nobody heard of, and watching that machine grow into becoming something that was worthy of signing to a major label. I knew a lot of A&R guys back in the 80s and 90s because of my music background, and I used to say to them, you know, how do you not get fired? And they said, well, we say no. You don't sign a band, you don't get fired. And studios have to crank out so many films a year. Production companies have to fulfill the machine, especially now because it's a bottomless pit, right? You know, how many productions are getting made at Netflix at any given time? It's 33, I think, right now. So there's a machine that needs to be filled, but I think they understand each other from a very generic standpoint. I still don't think they've found a way to really meld into, you know, harmonious relationship. It's very rare. It's very rare.